One. You're on.
Greetings, and welcome to the New York Review of Science Fiction Readings. As you may have noticed, or as at least we hope you've noticed, it's been a while since we've had a New York Review of Science Fiction reading, but we're returning to the fold. My name is Barbara Krasnoff, and I am going to be your host, and I will be talking with the wonderful writer Susan Emshwiller. Now, it's been a difficult year in a number of ways for both myself and Jim Freund, who is the producer and engineer here, but we're determined that the show will go on. And although we no longer have access to our previous venue, which was the Brooklyn Commons, there's a lot to be said for the virtual events. We've had guests from Australia, the UK, and other far-flung places. If you want to see some of these past NYRSF readings, you can find them on Jim's YouTube channel, YouTube at Jim Freund. We plan to return to our usual schedule of the first Tuesday of every month, um, starting perhaps next month, but we will keep you informed on how it goes, and we are planning a great lineup of readers. And as we return today, we are proud to present Susan Emshwiller, whose new novel, All My Ancestors Had Sex, has recently launched. By the way, we do apologize for the glitch we had a few weeks ago, but with any luck, we will all be able to hear Susan read from her great new book and talk to her and chat with her and ask her a little Q&A afterwards. So first, I am going to read her bio, and then we'll talk a little, and then she's going to read from her book. Susan Emshwiller wears several hats, sometimes many at the same time: filmmaker, playwright, screenwriter, teacher, director, novelist, actress, artist, improvisational carpenter. She was raised in Levittown on Long Island, New York, by writer Carol Emshwiller and sci-fi illustrator, avant-guard filmmaker Ed Emshwiller, both of whom were very talented and wonderful people. Susan got her BFA from Syracuse University in painting and printmaking and her MFA from California Institute of the Arts, where she studied film, mentored by Alexander McKendrick, who was responsible for such films as The Man in the White Suit and The Sweet Smell of Success. In Los Angeles, her day job for many years was set decorator, working with David Mamet, Michael Apted, Graeme Clifford, and notably with Robert Altman on The Player, in which she is also a featured actress. She has written and directed several plays, including critically acclaimed and award-winning Brushstrokes, inspired by the paintings of Edward Hopper. Her play Dominoes was published by the Dramatist Play Service, and Defrosting Popsicles by Playscripts. Susan has written many screenplays on spec and for hire. Most notably, she was co-writer of the Academy Award-winning film Pollock for actor-director Ed Harris. She has written and directed short films, PSAs, music videos, and commercials. Her feature film, In the Land of Milk and Money, a wild social satire, garnered awards and rave reviews at festivals in the US and internationally. Her short stories can be found in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, Independent Ink magazine, and a whole bunch of others. Her debut novel, Thar She Blows, which I am personally a huge fan of, is a finalist was a finalist in the 2023 Ian Book of the Year Awards and the Wishing Shelf Book Awards. Susan has taught play and screenwriting at North Carolina State University, and OLLI at Duke, at the Met Theater in Los Angeles, and in conferences and festivals around the country. And I apologize, I'm a little nearsighted, and for a second I lost my place there. She lives with her husband, dogs, and chickens in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where she enjoys inventing stories and backyard contraptions. Take a breath. Hi, Susan, how you doing?
Hello, thank you for having me here. And I'm glad to be able to talk about this new book.
I'm so glad. Okay, well, tell me, how did you start writing?
In the beginning?
In the beginning.
Well, growing up with a mother that was a writer, it was always around. We would go to sleep to the typewriter, the manual typewriter clacking, and my parents both did art all the time. So we kind of made films, wrote, did acting, painted. It was just part of the Levittown experience.
And how did you, and you've done plays and screenplays. How did you head into like short stories and novels?
It was kind of weird because I had done plays and screenplays for a really long time, and then about 10 years ago, I just had an idea for a short story, and I wrote it, and I was like, "Holy mackerel, this is so fun!" Because in plays and screenplays, you can't write down what somebody's thinking, and so suddenly I got to be first person, unreliable narrator, and that is so fun for me. And so I started doing that, and also the fact that you can have it done. It can be done. You don't have to go hire actors and get a camera or find a stage. That was also a wonderful boon for me.
Well, well, before we talk about the new novel, tell us a bit. Your first novel came out about a year ago.
Yes, a year ago, last April. Yeah,
Very good. And now you have a brand new one out. Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah. I mean, the first one, Thar She Blows, is about a kid that gets swallowed by a whale. Very realistic. And the second one is the one we're talking about today. All my ancestors have sex, and it's a very wild, crazy, absurdist story that hopefully is moving and provocative.
Well, I found it very moving and provocative and very strange, which is why I liked it so much. Why don't you read us a little bit from it?
I will. This will be about 20 minutes or 18 minutes if I timed it correctly today. So this is from the beginning of the book, in fact, the first chapter, and I will read a little bit of the chapters are all pretty short. So I'll read a few chapters and I'm going to jump just a touch to another point of view. So this is Vegetable Plan. As I vomit my meds on the sprouting vegetables, I wonder if this plan will work. So far, the plants seem happy. Little leaves reach toward the glass roof in a prayerful gesture as I hydrate them, no matter that the hydration is via stomach acid tinged with a cocktail of drugs I can't name except for lithium. I'm told working in the greenhouse is a privilege, liable to be rescinded at any time for behavioral infractions. I intend to keep this privilege by acting pliant and pleasing, thus getting good marks on my daily evaluation. Early on, I learned that it's impossible to hide 4 pills tucked in the gums or under the tongue. My keepers are used to that subterfuge. Nurse Blinky repeats the song for each of us. Lift tongue, to the side, other side, thank you. Swallowing is the best option. That day I was strong-armed up the wide steps and into this institution was the day I succumbed to the effects of my meds. A squirt of bile in my brain that led to confusion, lethargy, dizziness, and a dull contentment. I'm not sure how many months I was in this state, but as I floundered, part of me, many parts, swarmed to my rescue. My right hand had its finger down my throat when I finally came to. Now I pretend to be confused, lethargic, dizzy, and dully content, all the while keeping this garden fertilized with meds. I intend to stay awake and aware. Mine is a serious sentence, and it's up to me to extricate us from the situation. Up to me, us, me, us. You'll get it. But I'm charging ahead of myself. You want the down on how I came to be in this nut house. Reckon I start at the beginning. Paint by numbers, born. I'm not cognizant of what went on before I was born or immediately after, so you'll have to give me license to speculate. Although much of what I recount is fact, other moments are informed extrapolation. I do know mine was to be a paint by numbers life. My course was set and the outcome expected to be magnificent. When I was not even a twinkle in Evelyn and Philip's eyes, they made plans. Perhaps you've heard of vision boards where people paste images and words on a surface, creating a collage of what they want to manifest in their lives. My parents didn't do that. My parents made vision books. They, mother, cut pictures from periodicals, Architectural Digest, the New Yorker, The Atlantic, Prestige, Town and Country, from clippings of beaming babies in bassinets to well-dressed young professionals in well-appointed homes. My parents planned each milestone of my projected journey and created 31 leather-bound vision books, one volume for each anticipated year of my life, babyhood on toward 30. Being members of the super rich and used to outsourcing everything, they opted to forgo the muss and fuss of pregnancy and implanted their fertilized egg into a surrogate womb. Yasmina was already known as a reliable and hardworking housekeeper and was amenable to the incubation payout. In a petri dish, father's sperm was injected into mother's egg, and presso changeo, I was created. The parental chromosomes mingled, set about sorting which parts of the deoxyribonucleic acid to keep or discard, and I was concocted of these randomly selected strands, millions of bits of countless generations. I was made entirely of the past. But whoever did the fertilization procedure got a text or a notification on their phone and didn't give me a stir. At least that's my theory. I wasn't stirred, and all that DNA didn't get homogenized. After 5 days in an incubator, I graduated from a multi-celled embryo into a blastocyst. A syringe sucked me up and squirted me into my new home, Yasmina's insides. In our Central Park West building, Yasmina was moved from her housekeeper quarters off the kitchen to a suite of rooms that was to become the nursery. She was fed nutritious meals. Our chauffeur, Alberto, took her to weekly checkups and ultrasounds, and mother brought her to the Upper West Side Yoga Center as a guest member to keep the blood and amniotic fluid moving and to show off. My parents did not ask to know the sex of this growing fetus, yet they had the baby clothes, silver spoon, and silk sheets monogrammed with EGG in anticipation of Edward Gregor Gaston. As I grew, Philip and Evelyn counted the days and set aside Tuesday, the 4th of April, in their schedules. They pre-enrolled me in preschool at Sebastian's and with a generous gift, secured me a place in Rothschild Academy for my high school years. My life was in place. My first crime. On April Fool's Day, during Downward Facing Dog, Yasmina groaned and I popped my head out, my features stretching the crotch of her yoga pants. I hollered, Yasmina screamed, and mother yelled, "Shove it back in!" Yasmina didn't. She lowered her pants and I slid out, landing face first on the yoga mat. Yasmina gently turned me over and mother gasped. My second crime. I was female. Unaware of the horror of this infraction, the ladies of the yoga session curdled round me, cooing. They say all babies come out a red-faced, scrunched, wrinkly mess that fairly quickly evolves into the cutest button you ever saw. I didn't. My third crime, I was ugly. First day. There on the yoga mat, Yasmina couldn't help but lift me to her breast. Mother balked. The yoga ladies pulled her aside. It's just the first drink that's important. All those good nutrients. After that, you can use formula. And so I was allowed to nurse. Yasmina's eyes were dark brown and her breath was warm and she smelled of goodness. She held me close and her milk was hot and dense and infused me with bliss from those swallows. When I burped and lolled away, Mother swiped her phone screen and a large amount of money moved from her bank account to Yasmina's. With that, my personal Sherpa was sent away. I was wrapped in a towel and the yoga mat and driven home. In the nursery, my parents hovered over the state-of-the-art bassinet to peer at me, and I peered at them. Mother, Evelyn, was a young woman of 25, styled, coiffed. She was pretty, but clearly a matron in training. Requisite pearl necklace and earrings, dressed via money. She wore a stiff smile hinting at a deeply buried distress. Father, Philip, stood behind her, jaw tall and imposing with ostentatious good looks. Dimpled chin, strong jaw, one lock of hair carefully out of place. All of him was charismatically handsome, but for something cold lurking in his eyes. Mother shifted her pursed lips from one side to the other. Do you think the face? I'm positive, Father said with his ubiquitous confidence. The features are still in flux. It's been hours. Patience, my dear. Later that night, my parents checked on me again. Shining a phone light, they discovered that time had brought me no closer to the ideal they'd planned for. One eye was green, the other brown. My scalp had a splotch of pale, thin hair, another of dark curls, and a spike of red. On my forehead was a birthmark of white spiderweb lines. My right leg seemed plumper and darker than the left, which was muscular and had a ragged scar around the thigh. One arm was pink, had freckles and baby rolls at the elbow. The other was tan and weathered and sinewy. I was not acceptable, Mother whined. Perhaps, shall we call Yasmina, see if she wants the child? We can't call Yasmina. Remember, that was your brilliant idea. No contact whatsoever. She can't have disappeared to New Orleans already. It's only been half a day. Mother turned to him. We can't give this creature to our housekeeper, but maybe we could do the A word. Father looked at the ceiling, staring at it like he was running through the words that start with A. Apple, airplane, Adirondack, aardvark. What's the A word? Adoption. I could call an agency tomorrow. We must do it anonymously. I won't have the Gaston name associated with. At this moment, I pressed my little lips together and pushed out a sound through them, then released the lips. Ma! It came out so good, I did it again. Ma! Mother looked at me, surprise widening her features. Did you hear that? She said, Mama. Mother leaned close. Yes, you did. You said, Mama. She turned to Father. We're keeping her. She's our genes. She may not have gotten any of the good ones, but there are genes and our ancestors' genes, and we're keeping her. Thus began my relationship with Evelyn and Philip. After much Googling, my parents settled on the name that matched the monograms EGG, Elizabeth Gillian Gaston. Childhood. Throughout my childhood, I tried to match each year's vision book's expectations, but Mother and Father had decorated the pages with magazine clippings of their expected young boy, young teen, young man, a hero, never altering the books when they got me. It was not just the hero's gender that I bore no resemblance to, but every one of those compiled manifestations was beautiful. They were thin with straight blonde hair and all had a look of intellectualism, artistic awareness, and a benign tolerance of whoever was the lesser behind the camera. My visage had changed since infancy. It had gotten worse. I was an amalgam of leftover parts, oddly stout in places, thin and knobby in others. My skin color varied from limb to limb. My hair continued to be a mess, sections of dark curls, strands of shiny black, tufts of blonde, and one lock of red. Hair tinting was discussed, as was plastic surgery, to meld my mismatched bits, but Mother insisted on patience. Elizabeth hadn't yet hit puberty. Let's wait to see if Ugly Duckling becomes a swan. They bought a 6-foot plush frog wearing a crown for my bedroom, undoubtedly hoping that if I kissed it enough, I'd turn into a princess. I kissed it all the time. After 8 years, my parents decided that all the effort and planning they put into the perfect child was worth another try. This time, they did everything to ensure the correct gender, and suspecting that my visage might be due to contamination of being incubated in the dark, short Yasmina, they opted for a more appropriate vessel. Zoe, a thin, blonde NYU student. 9 months later, Finley arrived. He was on schedule and entirely as anticipated. All the missed years of cooing and coddling rushed in to envelop him. If I was jealous, it was well buried, for I saw him clearly as all I was not. There was a good reason for this outpouring of love, this focus of care. He was dearly lovable, while I had never been. Dragon Lady, Lincoln County Fairgrounds, Kentucky, 1962. I bellow a full-throated roar at my hand, revving the engine of my Indian motorcycle and urging it to pull. The heavy log changed to the bike, snakes in the mud, swirls out, back tire spins, spattering the onlooking jerks as they stare in shock that a chick can handle this machine. Of course, with my short beatnik hair and my cool shades, half of them figure I'm a man. I pull the bike perpendicular to the hilltop and spin sideways, switchbacking up the rise. Impossible, but doing it. Men cursing to the right and left of me as their bikes slide backwards down the slick hill. Hitting the apex, I angle just so, and with a blast in first, then spinning in reverse, the log slingshots around the end of the bike and slides ass first over the finish line. I raise my fists in triumph and scream out my victory. The MC yells into the mic, and across the finish line is. He pauses as Bo crosses the line behind me. Bo Tompkins! What the hell? I drop my bike and march to the cluster of cats around the microphone. You jiving me? What part of crossing the finish line first isn't winning? I yell. The guys look sheepish. You aren't using a regulation chain. Disqualified. There ain't no regulation chain. Let me see that in any rules. I raise my fist. Show me now, or you'll all be seeing stars. The MC shudders with a mock terrified face. I'm so scared, seeing stars. The crowd has gathered, eager for blood. You're a bunch of boys that can't stand being beaten by a chick. Bo pushes me aside as he moves to the trophy stand. Pardon me, lady. Screw you, Bo. You stole this race. Bo laughs and points at me. Look at Maxine. She's crazy mad. A dragon lady. The onlookers latch onto the name and chant, Dragon lady, dragon lady. Bo bends to the microphone. Give Dragon Lady second place, a courtesy cup. Courtesy cup, my ass. The engraver's tool hums, etching grooves in the silver cup. He hands the cup to the MC, who announces, and in second place for the 1962 log race, Dragon Lady. And Bo tosses the engraved cup to me. Second place, Dragon Lady. I snarl at him. I'll bury your dick in a shoebox like a dead hamster. Bo laughs. Raising the trophy cup, I scream over the crowd. You suckers ain't gonna forget me now. I'm Dragon Lady. Almost a field trip. One of the first instances of my limbs acting independently was when I was 12, before puberty hell hit. I was getting ready for a Rothschild Academy field trip. Our field trips were always to venues for the wealthy. In this case, we'd be looking at the pinnacle of rich people furniture at the New York Design Center. I'm about to slip into Mother's favorite outfit for me, the designer light blue dress. But when I try to reach for it, my right arm doesn't move. Am I paralyzed? Am I having a stroke? I look at the dress and look at the arm. My arm's expression, no. Because I think I'm generally messed up and weirdness isn't a surprise, I asked my arm, "What would you like to wear?" You would be hard pressed to see an appendage jerk out with more fervor. My arm flies to grab black jeans and a dark blue pajama top. Of course, seeing me dressed as a beatnik, Mother puts her foot down and refuses to let me out of the apartment. I put my foot up and kick the Chippendale Hall table. Well, I didn't kick, my leg did. Mother slaps me. I slap her. It's such a shock, we both burst into tears and run to our respective rooms. Slapping my mother is not who I thought I was. How can I be such a horror? Maybe I'm not only ugly and female, but mean. I cry for a long time, hoping Mother will come in. She doesn't. The stuffed frog with the crown stares at me in disdain. A princess doesn't act so horribly. When I emerge, penitent and in the blue designer dress, Mother informs me that I've forfeited the right to the field trip and that my violent behavior will not be tolerated. I want to ask about her violent behavior, but don't. Back in my room, I vow never to be violent again. A voice in my brain says, good luck with that. That's the reading. And we shall be talking in a moment. I hope you will have some questions.
Okay. Sorry, here I am back. Thank you so much, Susan. That was a wonderful reading. And yes, if anyone has any questions that they want to ask, please put them in the chat, and we will ask them for you. In the meantime, where did this story come from?
Well, it came from a few different things. One was I started the story about paint by numbers life, and it was just about a rich kid that kind of was living a life that was totally planned. And then I had a dream about a World War II German soldier who lost his leg in a ditch, and for some reason, I said I'm going to jam this into this other story, and it didn't fit in the slightest. And then I was in a prompt writing group, and years earlier, I had found this silver trophy, log race, 1962, second place, Dragon Lady. I just thought, wow, this is provocative. I'm very curious about what a log race is and who Dragon Lady would be. And so in the prompt group, I did a little kind of quick guessing of her winning this race. And then I said, oh, I'm going to jam that in this story too. Why? I have no idea. So it kind of moved along, and I do write without knowing where I'm going, and it's kind of just like fishing in my subconscious. And at a certain point, things started coalescing, and I realized that this could be all about ancestors, and then it moved from there.
All My Ancestors Had Sex is a very interesting title. How did you come up with that?
I'm so grateful that it just popped up one day. I mean, in the beginning, it was a paint by numbers life, and then I thought, well, this is all about ancestors, and it has a lot to do with sex too. And then I realized, well, it's true. All my ancestors did have sex. Otherwise, they wouldn't be my ancestors. So I was a little trepidatious in the beginning, but then I thought, no, this is a great title. I'll just use it.
It's a wonderful title, and I'm also grateful because I've put it on social media, and so far nobody has pulled my account yet.
Good.
So now here's something that I observed. Now, Thar She Blows is basically about two people who basically by the end of the novel have learned their own worth. Is this a, and without giving anything away, is this a, you think this is also possibly one of the themes of your new novel?
Um, I think maybe the idea of people changing, growth of the characters is important for me in telling a story. I think there's the plot, but then there's the internal change that to me is more interesting than plots. And so I always want to have that. And um, in terms of themes, I think that's one. Uh, and then also, when I was writing Thar She Blows, I started it when I moved out of Los Angeles and we moved to North Carolina, and I was suddenly not a Californian anymore, and I was shocked after 34 years of losing my home. And I then Thar She Blows becomes about home as a theme. And then with this new book, All My Ancestors Have Sex, I my mom died in 2019. My father had a retrospective of all his films and art in 2019. I was the executor of my mom's estate and my dad's films and all that. And I was so sick of the past being my life. And so I think that kind of came through as, wow, I'm how do I get rid of the past?
Or how do you, although you don't really get rid of it at all. You can't
No,
really get rid
no,
of it.
no, you can't. But at the time in my, I felt trapped by doing all this stuff for my dead parents.
Hmm. I gotcha. Believe me, I've gotcha. Um, how did now how let's look at the cover for a second, which unfortunately, and I will tell you, it is sort of reversed.
Oh,
Um, but that's okay. We,
Oh,
you know, the words are reversed, but we can still see the design. Okay, how did you come up with the design?
I I did a lot
I
of drawings of different ideas, like possibly the main character's face made out of photographs of ancestors. I did a lot of mock-ups, and then I had this idea of creating a conglomerate of the different characters, the specific different characters. And so I went on Etsy and bought a whole lot of little sculptures.
oh, that's wonderful.
And it's like this is Simon, this is Heinrich, this is Jenny, this is Dragon Lady, uh, Solveig, Kelly, and who's this? Ruby. I think I got them all. So so that was kind of a fun thing to do, and then I hung it in a little background with clouds and fake grass.
One thing that and since you read this, we can discuss this. One thing that really fascinated me and got me totally confused when I first started reading the novel was your protagonist, who is basically discovers she's got pieces. She's all her parts are different.
Yes,
Um,
physically is like, yeah, she has each part of her is different, and I tried to describe that in the reading too. That one's leg darker, and one arm is sinewy, and uh, then she has all different kinds of hair. One eye is green, one eye is blue, brown.
yeah, and
Yeah,
so did
pretty
you
piecemeal.
start with that and then figure out how she did it, how that occurred, or
No, it was kind of a once I discovered it was about ancestors, then I had to slide that in earlier, alter it.
okay, we have a question from Nancy Peacock, who wants to know, were you doing the drawings as you figured out the characters or only trying to figure out the cover?
I only did it when I was trying to figure out the cover. I have everything really sharp in my head. I tend to write as if I'm watching a movie and then just writing what I see or hear. But I didn't do it any drawings until I was trying to do the cover.
And Amy Goldschlager, our person wrangler, asks, how has your work in film influenced your prose? Your writing is exceptionally visual.
I think it influenced it because I just see the whole thing, and sometimes I'm like even acting out something, and then I get to feel it by acting it out, and then I write down the feeling of the character. And I think when I stopped writing or took a hiatus from writing screenplays and plays, it was so fun to go interior, and I love the idea of Miss being unreliable narrator, just having the audience know what is happening, but it's not being described correctly.
But I agree. I mean, it's a good question that Amy asked, because you have the film background, you have the background being a set decorator, you have a much more visual background than a lot of writers
Yeah,
have.
yeah, and I also notice sometimes, in film they call it blocking, or in stage, how the actors are moving, and I noticed that that I tend to really remember what the blocking of my characters are. Oh no, they can't be doing that because they've sat down and
Mm-hmm,
have to get
mm-hmm.
them up. Uh, and so, when I was teaching, I would be like, no, that person can't be by the door. You have them sitting down by the fireplace. We have to have a transition. Uh, we can do jump cuts, says film, but I do like to pay attention to everything. And it's hard sometimes because I want to, as if we're panning across something, I want the reader to see but not notice something, so that I'm setting it up, but they don't notice that I put it in there.
And Amy continues the discussion, basically saying, I would also assume your work as an actor would feed into the visual nature of your work, since you know what it is to be a character.
Right. I think it does do that. And it also taught me when I first started taking acting lessons, it was because I wanted to be able to speak to actors and direct them. Um, I didn't necessarily want to be an actor. But I did notice a huge change it made in my writing, because I realized that actors can do so much. They don't have to keep gabbing. They don't have to have uh, a full page of dialogue when they can say it in 2 words or 3 sentences. I was very repetitive when I first started writing, and I think the acting helped a lot.
Um, Before I ask the next question, I will ask people to, if they have any more questions, to go ahead and ask. That's what we're here for. Um, I noticed you started with, after being a playwright, you started with short stories, and then you went on to write 2 novels. Do you find anything different in the process of being a short story writer versus writing a novel?
Definitely, short stories are, to me, like movies, I think, tend to work as short stories better. Is like there is the story, whereas novel, it's like I tend to do multiple characters. Well, I've done 2 novels, so who knows? But I think just having multiple things that you weave makes it very harder and more interesting, in a sense, for the writer, at least for me, to create a world that lots is going on, and you're setting up something over here, and then something else with a different character is going to play into it. Um, it's a lot of fun.
Okay. Chris Colson asks, can you possibly remember how you felt when you wrote the last sentence way back when? Because I felt deeply moved and beyond exhilarated.
Thank you. I with this book and both of them actually, I felt very fulfilled finishing the story and having it work out the way it does. And then I cry when I'm writing. I laugh. I go through all the emotions that I'm hoping that the reader will go through.
That's great, and it's a problem that I have as well. And since I often tend to write very sad stories, I can embarrass the hell out of myself sometimes. Lynn Monroe, by the way, doesn't have a question, but she does want to say, so good to see you, even if it is only Zoom. Love to you and Chris. Got the book. We'll start it soon.
Thank you, Lynn.
Now, what was the process of getting your first book published?
I had an agent for about 5 years, and I had a earlier novel that I wrote called Exclamation Point. It's more of a slightly more normal, even if it's still got weirdness. I wrote that. I wrote Thar She Blows, and then I wrote Ancestors Sex, and my agent loved them. He took them around for 5 years, and I didn't get even the slightest nibble, and I was very frustrated. And I started hearing that the publishing industry is really changing so much that you have to be basically a Taylor Swift of writing to get picked up. So I didn't want to wait forever, and so my husband has an independent press, Pinehead Press, and they have published the book.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
And did they publish both books?
Yes.
And are you working on another one?
Yes, I have. Well, I'm also considering doing Exclamation Point, the first novel. I have a collection of short stories that going through them with a writing group that I'm part of. And then I've started a new one that I don't know what it is yet. So I'm still fishing.
Okay. Now, this may be an unfair question, but I mean, you've worn so many different hats. Is there one that you prefer?
I think it's the work comes out of a desire to express a certain thing, and certain things can be expressed in making a assemblage. I do that sometimes, like a sculpture of something, and that's like a thing that you look at and you go, "Oh, I get the story of that," and then another thing works better as film. Another thing works better as a play. I think because I was doing so much play and film, that because novels and short stories can be created without other people, it just is like, oh, nice. It's a break for me, but I still have been doing assemblage stuff and a little bit of painting. So each story, each thing that I want to express finds its own art form.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to ask you whether you were working on any projects outside of stories and novels and written and that type of thing.
I can't really show you the room, but there's a lot of crap around here. I call it my laboratory. It's like I don't throw a lot of shit away. I keep weird things, and then all of a sudden I'll go, oh yes, I know I have that little spring that's gonna be the antlers to the animal head lampshade that I'm building, which is actually something I was just drawing. So I want to do a face of like, you know how armor, they used to have armor for the horses as well. That's what I want to do as a lampshade. We have a lampshade and it's a lamp.
Oh my.
So I want to kind of put together a jello mold and some springs and a cheese grater for the snout.
Oh, that will be great. Yeah, I have, and I can't show it to you, but several years ago, at the Nebulars, Jim gave me a little robot statue that's made completely of kitchen utensils.
Right.
And that sort of reminds me of that. I love that robot, and I'd love to see your lampshade when it was finished.
Yes, I hope I get to it.
If anybody else has any questions, please go ahead and ask, because I am running out of ideas. um, all right, going back to Thar She Blows, you have basically two main characters. But in this novel, you have actually, if you sort of have two main
Yeah, and
characters.
then I
You
have
have
like an indigenous guy, Nate. I have the father kidnapped
Mhm.
the little girl, I can't, the bottle.
Yeah, it's a different. How do you differentiate between your characters? I mean, that's a very hard thing to do.
When I was doing all my ancestors have sex, I knew that I needed to have really specific ways of speaking that for each character, because I didn't want to go says Dragon Lady, says Simon, says, because it would get so boring. So I needed to have really specific words that would crop up, like Ruby is always saying, reckon we should do that. So if you see the word reckon, you go, oh, Ruby. And,
Uh-huh.
Jenny, I'm looking at the names because I can't always remember. Uh, Jenny is like the suffragette, and she's very erudite and uses big words for that time period. And so that when you see a sentence that's too long and too many big words, you know it's Jenny. So I found it that worked well for me to kind of create these characters with really specific language.
Amy Goldschlager has another question. She says, "You talked about having creative parents and the pressure that puts on you. What about the pressure of having creative siblings, which you also have?"
Yeah, I mean, my brother is a actor and a voiceover actor and a novelist and editor, and he, uh, he was the one that did novels much more years and years ago, and so I was like, oh shit, I don't want to step on his toes. And my sister's a scientist, ethnobotanist, and teacher, and she was the person that was the other side of the coin. We had the artistic things, but at the same time, my dad was extremely whatever side brain, right brain, or whatever. Uh, he would figure out f-stops for the cameras and was very scientific, as with my grandfather on his side, was inventor, a patent office worker, an inventor. So it seems like there's both science and art in the family.
Hmm. Jim asks, of all the creatives you've worked with, have any had influence on you?
Well, I worked with Robert Altman 4 times, 4 different movies as a set decorator and then actor in one of them as well. What I loved about him was he was very improvisational. He would change, he would shoot it one way and then change. And he was also what I would call messy.
Hmm.
He wasn't like Kubrick, who I also love, but I never worked with. Kubrick seems to be like, I know how I want it. It's like this, 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 and we're going to take 58 takes to get it right. Altman was more like, okay, great, we got it. Let's do something else. I'm bored. And so he was an inspiration that way. And also, he took things that happened that were so-called mistakes or problems and turned them into fresh solutions. So I always feel like that's inspirational, very much for me.
Mm. Nancy Peacock wonders, I really appreciate how you have your hands in several different art forms. Do you feel like the powers that be in traditional publishing might try to channel your creativity too narrowly?
I I can only guess because nobody wanted this stuff, the work, that they thought it was too weird or not commercial enough. And I'm very happy that I didn't have to deal with a publisher that would say, well, first of all, we can't call it all my ancestors had sex. Let's call it Izzy. Uh, and let's make sure that she's not so ugly. I don't that word, but it's like the way things have to be versus each person's creativity. Let's make it so that creativity shines and uniqueness shines instead of having the publishing industry squash that.
Okay, someone who calls themselves Danger Danger Comedy asks, you mentioned you write by the seat of your pants without planning ahead. Does this mean you have to do a lot of rewriting when you finish, or do you manage to create a pretty polished first draft?
I think when the first draft is not polished. Usually, the first draft is this improvisational, trying to find out what the thing is, and then to me, when the first draft is done, I go, what is this? Oh, I didn't know it was that. Oh, that means I have to take this out and this out, and that means I have to add this, and so it evolves over the drafts because I don't know what it is, and the seat of the pants thing. I'll just pull up this other. I don't know if these things can be seen. That's fishing for in the subconscious.
Right.
And who knows what it is that you pull up, and it will have things that don't fit because you're just pulling from the subconscious, and they might end up being in a different story next time.
Okay. He Blanchard asks, I see the book is listed as YA. Was that your intention, or is that just an Amazon hallucination?
It must be an Amazon hallucination.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be YA. I
No.
specifically say adult material. Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. Okay, well, we're getting close to the hour, so I'm asking people if you have any questions, please. We still have a few minutes. You can ask them. Is there anything that Susan, that I haven't asked that you perhaps want to talk about?
Oh, I can't think of it offhand.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Susan. This was really fascinating. I mean, it was really great. I love both your novels.
Thank you.
Sometimes when I'm talking to an author, I'll sort of fake it. But in your case, I mean, I couldn't because I started them and I had to put it back. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This has been the NYRSF Readings. My name is Barbara Krasnoff, and this has been engineered and produced by Jim Freund, and our audience wrangler was Amy Goldschlager. If you would like to contribute, we do have a Patreon, which Jim has flowed occasionally at the bottom of this screen. We will be having, as Amy says, thank you. You've been a wonderful audience. We will be having more writers coming soon. Thank you very much to Susan for coming on and reading for us and answering our questions. And I am so looking forward to her next stuff. Thank you, everybody. We hope to see you soon. We will be announcing on Facebook and other social media when our next reading is and who it will be. We hope to go back to the first Tuesday of every month, but who knows? And we have been talking again to Susan Emshwiller about her new book, All My Ancestors Had Sex. Go out, buy it, look at some of our other stuff on YouTube, and thank you for coming. Take care.